guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in, and if you are new here, you're welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to learn how to draft and sew a detachable yoke. So if it's something that interests you, kindly watch this video to the end and make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can recommend my video to a wider audience. So let's get right into the video. Here is my starting point line, and from the starting point line I'm going to be marking my chest line. My actual chest line is 7 inches, but I came down by half an inch, so I'll be using 7.5 because I don't want the yoke to be too tight around the main fabric I'll be wearing. So I marked 7.5 inches as my shoulder line, which is also my chest line. Okay, so after doing that, I'm going to connect all of the marks together. So the next thing is to mark the shoulder slope of 1 inch, and I'm going to mark the neck width standard, which is 3 inches, and after that I'm going to be connecting all of the points together. So I'm also going to mark the neck depth for the back of 1.5 inch, okay, because we are going to be cutting the back neck first before cutting the front. I hope you understand. So I'm just trying to curve out the back neck. So for the front neck, I'll be using 3.5 inches. All right, so, or you can use 3 inches. So I marked 3 inches. So I'll also go ahead and also connect the front neck together. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do now is to take our shoulder slant. Okay, so I'm going to determine the armhole midpoint and then go in by half an inch. You also mark the quarter of the bust. Okay, you mark it up to the length of the yoke. You mark the quarter of your bust measurement, you mark it here. So after that, you connect it together and then go ahead and take in your armhole curve. So I'm also going to add half an inch joining allowance to the shoulder area, and on the neck you should have had half an inch to the neck when you are cutting it out. So right now I'm going to create the curve at the front, and I'm using 6 inches. Okay, even though I'm not going to be cutting it off yet. Now you mark half an inch sewing allowance out before taking your curve. Okay, so from there I'll go ahead now and take the curve, because the curve will not extend to the side seam. Okay, so I will go ahead now and use this to cut out the back before recutting the yoke shape. Okay, so I'm going to be cutting the back neck, making sure I'm adding half an inch to the neck area for turning it with lining. So you should have something like this. So I'll use this now to cut out the back pattern. So here is the back pattern, and it has zipper allowance. So I'll just place the front pattern on the back pattern like this. Okay, and I'll go ahead now and trace out what we have around there. So after tracing it out at the zipper area there, I'm just going to slant it a little bit by 1/4 inch, as you can see. So right here is our back, and the back pattern is ready. So I'm going to recut the front right now. Remember, we added half an inch to the neck at the back, so we also had half an inch to the front neck as well. So right here I decided to mark half an inch upward because I want it to go up a little, and I'm going to reshape the curve I have around there. I've already added sewing allowance to the length of this yoke. Okay, so I'm not adding any allowance when I'm cutting it on the fabric. Center front is going to be on fold. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside and cut out the sleeve. So I've folded my sleeve into 2, okay, and I folded it again into 4 because I'll be cutting the 2 sleeves together, and the length of the sleeve is about 7.5 inches. Okay, so I'm going to determine my sleeve cap, which is going to be 3.5. So to determine this, just divide your bust divided by 12. Whatever you have is your sleeve cap. So I will go ahead now and curve out my sleeve. So once that is done, I'm going to mark my round sleeve to check if I have the correct measurement. Okay, so I'm going to be adding 1 inch sewing allowance to whatever my round armhole is, so I'll mark it there. Now the round sleeve area here, my measurement is 6 plus 1 inch. I have 7, and I'm going to curve it together. So after that, you go ahead and cut it out. So we are going to be cutting the peplon, the flare that is going to be at the lower part of this sleeve. Now you can use slash and spread method by just using your basic sleeve, okay, but I'm just going to cut this as a flare. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm cutting the two sleeves together at the same time, so which means this two here is for one sleeve and the other is for the other sleeve. So that means I have 4 folds. So when I fold it like a triangle again, I'll be having 8 folds altogether. Okay, so you can see the opening part will be facing the folded part because the side of the sleeve is going to be opened. Okay, so from there now I'm going to mark the radius of our sleeve. So to determine this length of your sleeve, just mark your full length and remove that first sleeve we cut out. Remove the length from the full length, and the remaining length is going to serve as the flare that you're going to attach to the lower part of the sleeve. Now I'm going to be using a half circle for this particular sleeve, and the radius of the circle is going to be 5.6. okay, so the round flare of this sleeve is 18 inches. So when you divide 18 inches divided by 3.14, you have 5.6. So the radius of my sleeve now is going to be 5.6, which is what I marked around there. Okay, and the remaining length is going to be 17 inches. All right, so when you remove 7 inches from your full length, okay, whatever you have left is going to be the length of the flare you're going to attach to the main sleeve. So I'll go ahead and cut it out, and this is what I have after cutting it out. Okay, so I'll go and use the pattern now to cut out the other fabric. So you are going to be pleating this around the sleeve, so make sure you had excess that you can pleat around there. So here is the lining for the sleeve, and I've also cut out the lining for the fabric. I'm using the same fabric as lining. Okay, so I will just take this to my sewing machine now and start sewing all of this together. So as you can see, I'm using same fabric as the lining. Okay, hard stay to the main lining. Okay, so the next thing to do now is to attach the lining and the fabric separately. Okay, you're going to be joining it separately. So right here I've joined the front and back shoulder together. This is going to be the main fabric, which I ironed my stay on, and I've ironed the sewing allowance at the shoulder. So the next thing is to go and take in the side seam. So what I also did was to close up the zipper allowance so that I can take in the side seam. After taking the side seam, I'm going to lose the zipper allowance back. Okay, so I'll take the side seam on the main fabric. I'll also repeat the same thing on the lining as well. Can you see that I also taking the zipper allowance at the lining? So I'm going to lose everything after taking the side seam allowance. So the next thing now is to go and sew this together, and I'll bring it back for us to see what it looks like. Now the sleeve, I've gone ahead to pleat the sleeve or the flare on the main sleeve, and I use my lining to turn the joining allowance away. All right, so right here now I've okay, so what I'm going to do now is to join the side of the sleeve like this. Okay, I'm going to join it from the top to the bottom, and after that I'll go ahead and take in the elastic casing, because I'm going to be passing elastic through it, and I'll repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. So right here I've taken the side seam allowance, okay, and I've done that on the lining as well, and I'm gonna have to lose the zipper allowance. So can you see? So the next thing is to attach my zip to the allowance. So I'll mark half an inch upward, because that half an inch is going to serve as the turning allowance for turning the fabric with the lining. So you need to mark it out. So here is where I'm going to be attaching my zipper. So I'll do that for the other side of the main fabric as well. All right, and you sew it up to the neck and cut off the excess zipper you have around there. So right here I've attached my zipper to the main fabric. So can you see what I have? So what I'm going to do now is to match the main fabric together. So after matching it together, I'm going to notch the neck area, the center of the neck area, and I'm also going to notch the center of the lower part of the yoke as well, and I will repeat the same thing for the lining. So what I will do is to match the notch part of the lining and the main fabric together. So I'm going to sew it at the neck first. So after sewing it at the neck, you are going to top stitch, and then you sew it at the bottom. Make sure your lining is not longer than the main fabric. If it is, trim off the excess lining. And then the last thing you're going to do is to turn where you have the zipper allowance. Okay, you turn where you have the zipper allowance. After that, you're going to be turning them out from the armhole. So I'm gonna have to join them together at the neck, at the bottom, and also at the zipper allowance. So what I'm going to do now is to, I've already done that. I notched where I have the zipper, so I notch all the sharp edges I have around there. So what I'm going to do right now is to turn this out from the armhole, because this is an inseam finishing. Okay, all the seam allowance are inside, both the zipper allowance are inside, they are not visible. So after turning it out, you should have something like this after turning it out. Okay, just make sure everything is looking beautiful. So this is what I have after closing up the zipper allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go and attach my sleeve. You can see I've added the elastic casing to the sleeve. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and attach my sleeve to the armhole. So right here is my yoke. I've attached the sleeve, and this is going to be the end of our tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this video. Consider to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can recommend this video to other viewers. Bye.